What would you do if the one thing you had left was slipping away? On a stormy night, Arjun stood in his field, watching his crops drown in the torrential rain. His farm was all he had left. Would this be the end of everything he had worked for? Or was something bigger about to happen? Arjun had once been a merchant, but after his business failed, he returned to his roots as a farmer. Every day, he worked tirelessly, hoping for a miracle to save his family. One day, a weary traveler knocked on his door, hungry and desperate. Arjun shared his last meal with him, even though he had little to give. The next morning, a royal carriage arrived. The traveler was the king, disguised to test the hearts of his people. The king rewarded Arjun's kindness with a chest of gold. Arjun rebuilt his life and helped his village, proving that kindness always finds its way back to you. What would you do if you had lost everything and had nothing left to give? Arjun wasn't always a farmer. He had once dreamed of becoming a successful merchant. But life had a cruel way of knocking him down. After his business collapsed, Arjun had no choice but to return to the farm where he grew up. It was his last hope, but even then, the crops weren't enough to feed his family. Each day, he woke up with the weight of regret and worry in his heart. The bills piled up on the kitchen table, and his children looked up at him with eyes full of hope, eyes that he didn't know how to reassure. But Arjun wasn't one to give up. He spent his last few coins buying seeds. Each day, he worked harder, digging deeper into the soil, planting with a quiet determination, even though exhaustion weighed him down. As the sun set each day, his hands would be covered in dirt, his body drained, but his spirit remained strong. He refused to give in to despair. Every seed he planted held the faintest hope that it might be the one to change everything. Arjun knew that without this crop, he would lose not just his farm, but his dream of a better life for his family. Despite the odds, he held on to his belief that something greater was out there, waiting for him, if only he could hang on a little longer. And every night, as he stared at the stars, he whispered to himself, "Tomorrow will be better." He didn't know how or why, but deep down, he knew he had to keep going. Each day was a new chance, a small glimmer of hope that could lead to something miraculous. Arjun just had to believe in the future that was still within his reach. What would you do if a stranger knocked on your door, hungry and desperate, and you had nothing left to give, but still offered what little you had? Arjun's life had been a constant struggle, each day a battle against the inevitable. But one cold evening, when he thought things couldn't get worse, a weary stranger appeared at his doorstep. The man was thin, ragged, and looked as though he had been traveling for days without rest. His eyes were tired, and his clothes were torn from the journey. Without hesitation, Arjun opened the door and invited him inside, offering the only food he had left, a single loaf of stale bread. "Why are you so kind to me?" the stranger asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "When you have nothing yourself?" Arjun smiled softly, his hands trembling as he broke the bread into pieces. "We give what we can, not because we have much, but because we know how it feels to have nothing." His voice carried a sense of understanding, born from his own struggles and the weight of years spent trying to make ends meet. The stranger nodded thoughtfully, a look of gratitude passing over his face. "You are a good man," he said, reaching for the bread with trembling hands. "Thank you." Arjun sat beside him, watching as the stranger ate. The wind howled outside, and the rain hammered the roof with an unrelenting fury. As the storm raged on, Arjun's heart ached with the realization that he had nothing else to offer, but still he had given all he could. The stranger finished his meal and looked at Arjun with a quiet appreciation. He stood to leave, disappearing into the night just as the storm grew fiercer. The next morning, as the sun broke through the clouds, Arjun went about his daily routine, his heart still heavy with the memory of the stranger. He had no idea what would come next, but he continued with the quiet hope that things might one day change. Then, as he worked in his fields, a royal carriage appeared at the edge of his farm. At first, Arjun thought he was seeing things. The carriage was grand, unlike anything he had ever seen. It shimmered in the morning light, its golden accents reflecting the sun. The carriage came to a halt at his doorstep, and the driver jumped down, opening the door. A tall, regal figure stepped out, wearing rich robes that glimmered like the stars. Arjun stood frozen, unable to believe what he was seeing. The man who had knocked on his door the night before, the one he had shared his last meal with, was no longer ragged and tired. He was now standing before him in full royal attire. You are the king?" Arjun stammered, his voice barely a whisper. The king smiled warmly, his eyes filled with a deep understanding. "Yes, I am, but I am also a man who has learned something important about the kindness of others." Arjun's heart raced. He had been so focused on his own struggles that he never imagined something like this could happen to him. He had simply acted out of kindness, not expecting anything in return. And yet here he was, standing before the very person who ruled the land. "I have been traveling throughout the kingdom, testing the hearts of my people," the king continued. "I wanted to see who would offer help without asking for anything in return, who would give from their heart. And last night, I found that in you." Arjun could barely believe his ears. The king had been watching, had been testing his heart, and had seen the very essence of who he was. Despite his struggles, despite having nothing to give, Arjun had chosen to share, and that act of kindness had not gone unnoticed. "I am here to offer you a reward," the king said, reaching into the carriage and pulling out a chest. "This is for you, Arjun. You've shown the true spirit of generosity, and now it's time for your life to change." Arjun's breath caught in his throat as the chest was opened before him, revealing gold coins, jewels, and treasures beyond his wildest dreams. "You will not only rebuild your farm, but you will also be able to help those around you. Your kindness has made an impact, and it will continue to do so," the king said, handing Arjun the chest. Overwhelmed, Arjun could hardly believe the turn his life had taken. The stranger, the king, this was a moment he would never forget. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, kindness could lead to something greater than anyone could imagine. What if the kindness you showed in your darkest moment changed everything? The king handed Arjun a chest filled with gold. "Your kindness has proven more valuable than riches," he said. "This is for you, to rebuild what the storm has taken." Arjun stood frozen, the chest heavy in his hands, his eyes filled with tears. He had never imagined this moment, never dreamed that his simple act of kindness could lead to such a profound change. With the king's gift, Arjun rebuilt his farm, but he didn't stop there. He helped his neighbors, the people who had also been struggling. He shared his newfound wealth, offering hope to those who had lost everything. The village, once barren and desolate, began to flourish. Fields grew lush, homes were repaired, and a sense of unity spread through the community. Arjun's life had been transformed, not by wealth, but by the power of kindness. It was a light that guided him through the storm, and he, in turn, became that light for others. What if the kindness you give today could change your life tomorrow? Arjun learned that when you give with a pure heart, the universe finds a way to give back. What you sow, you will reap, sometimes in ways you could never imagine. His farm, once struggling, was now bountiful, and his family thrived. The gold, the king's gift, had transformed not just his life, but the lives of everyone in the village. They were stronger together, bound by the simple truth that kindness was the most valuable currency. As Arjun stood with his family, a bountiful harvest in their hands, he realized that his journey wasn't just about material wealth. It was about the light he had shared with others, and how that light had come back to him. What's one act of kindness you can do today, no matter how small? You never know the impact it might have on someone's life. Comment below if you've experienced kindness in unexpected ways. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories.